Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hey, happy Monday. It is 9 a.m. Central Standard Time on Monday, May 19th, 2025. My name is Keith, and welcome to the stream. Hope you had a good weekend. Mine was, uh, mine was pretty good. That's pretty good. I got a bunch of house stuff done. I didn't write much code this weekend, but I did start a new project. I planned it out. Worked with ChatGPT to outline the scope of the project. I created a design document for the project, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. Pretty good. I gotta generate some data. I gotta create some data. But welcome. How was your weekend? It was a crazy news weekend. Crazy. We had a terrorist attack. We had a boat run into a bridge. We had tornadoes and crazy weather stuff all through the Midwest. Man, it was. We got a former president with cancer. Lots of crazy news. We had a jailbreak. Well, that happened last week, but it's still going on. They haven't found them all. And we are barreling towards the end of May. We're on the second half of May. Okay, well, my name is Keith. I have been a professional developer, as it says on that scroll there, for over 30 years. If you are in the job market, perhaps you got laid off, perhaps you know somebody who has, and you're looking for somebody to hang out with while you get those job applications out, that's why I've created this stream. I've been doing it since January 1st, Monday through Friday, at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. I actually started at 8, but I moved it back a little bit. And that's what we do. We do two things on the stream. We look at job numbers in terms of how many job postings are being posted. And we look at news stories that may or may not affect the tech industry, the greater tech industry. So let's just jump into it. Feel free to jump in the chat and ask a question. I'm always happy to chase rabbits down the hole and answer any questions that you might have. Some of the best moments on the stream so far have been when people dropped a question in the chat. So feel free. And if you haven't connected with me on LinkedIn, also consider doing that. Always looking to grow my network of folks in tech. All right, let's look at those job numbers. So we focus on JavaScript developers because that is the language of the web. It's certainly not comprehensive in terms of what goes on in tech, but for the last 25 years, where web developers go, so go the tech industry. So it's a good thumbnail. It's a good indicator. What we can see in the last 7 days, the numbers have been flat. If we look back at the last 6 months, there's a downward trend. Some of that is kind of seasonal in nature, but not all of it. But the numbers, frankly, have not been great. Our peak in the last 6 months is twice as high as it has been this week. And if we look back at the last year, which would sort of adjust for seasonal differences, we can see that we're off probably 40% from where we were a year ago. So we've talked a lot about that on the stream and what those causes. So it's obviously a complex world, business world, and political world, and financial world that contributes to this. But we can see some clear effects in the last month of and just previous to that, where the latest administration's tariffs went into effect, and we just saw a crazy dip in the number of job postings. And in general, just a concern from the business sector that this series of administrative pushes have left a lot of uncertainty in the market, and that uncertainty makes it hard to forecast, and the hard forecast makes it makes people skittish about hiring new people. So there are still jobs being posted every day, including yesterday. I got up yesterday and checked my numbers, and there are more jobs being posted yesterday. But they're generally backfill postings. They lost somebody, and they need to fill that role, but they're not. What we're not seeing is like, oh, things look great, so let's start to bump up our headcount and grow this company. Let's create new features. Let's add new products. Let's attack new markets. We're definitely not seeing any of that right now. And that's where a lot of growth comes from. That's where a lot of hiring comes from. If we look at those numbers that are in a way that sort of slices them up, both to include graphs about remote work and broken down by different experience levels, we can see that the overall job numbers, again, have been mostly flat this year. They're bouncing back from the low from a couple of weeks ago based on those tariffs, but they are not breaking through. They are just returning to the mean, as it were, for this year so far. The red number here is remote jobs. This is, of course, important because you can, wherever you are, apply for a remote job. And we've seen that be pretty consistent, although there is a slight downward trend there in terms of overall job postings. If we slice that data up by experience level, we can see that entry level, pretty flat and consistent. Senior level, pretty flat and consistent. These are in-person roles. Mid-level, the same. A little more volatility in the mid-level roles than the other two, but we are seeing those rebound. When we look at the remote versions of that, we can see again entry level starting to dip off in the last week or so, but it's been pretty consistent this year. Same with senior level. But we are seeing a downtrend in those mid-level remote roles, less of those than there were a couple of months ago. Again, off about maybe 30% from where we were. Just about every day past the first couple of weeks of this year, I'm coming in here and saying the numbers aren't great. They're just not great. But they are what they are. Knowledge is power, right? We want to focus on what we can control and pay attention to, the wind as it blows in the larger industry. The other thing, again, that I like to do is look at news stories that may or may not affect the tech industry or the larger business world. And LinkedIn's got a great feed for that, so I hit that during the stream. Fully U.S.-made cars are not feasible. Much like Apple's iPhone, the 100% U.S.-made car is a good idea in theory, but in reality, it's complicated and prohibitively costly. CNBC explains vehicles have, on average, 20,000 components when fully disassembled, and parts come from 50 to 120 countries. That is crazy. I've never seen those numbers before. In the U.S., sourced raw materials and chips would involve opening new plants and mines, likely taking at least a decade. One expert estimates that extra cost to produce a standard $48,000 vehicle would potentially be an additional $20,000. I mean, the general gist of that obviously is something we've all sort of known for a while, but those specific numbers coming from 50 to 120 different countries, 20,000 components. You know, if you're over a certain age and you've worked on cars before, either because you enjoy it or because of necessity, you know there's a lot of parts in cars because stuff breaks all the time, and you got to go to the auto parts store and order this little thing or that little thing. Intuitive, we know there's a lot of components on a car, but to put a number to it like that, 20,000 components, I would not have guessed that high. I probably would have guessed, I don't know, 7,000. So I would have lost that bet. Lost that bet. Um, yeah. I mean, again, we've spent decades now offshoring all of our uh, manufacturing, and we can't just flip a switch and bring it all back here. We just can't. We had a story last week about. Oh no, I saw it over the weekend. We've got it coming up here. Actually, let me smooth that one now. It's kind of where we're at right now. Factories have a staffing problem. What if you built a factory and no one showed up to work there? For years of bipartisan promises of bringing more manufacturing jobs to the United States, the country currently has nearly 500,000 unfilled manufacturing positions, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And 65% of manufacturing firms say that staff recruitment and retention is their biggest challenge. Among the issues, a lack of properly skilled workers, strict degree requirements for jobs, and outdated notions of what factory work is like. Yeah. Um, most factories, because of automation and robotics, have changed drastically over the last couple of decades. Um, and I've been talking about this since 2015. I really got on this jag probably 10 years ago about like, hey, how come the time I was manufacturing a product myself, um, and I was like, look, so much of what is manufactured these days is cranked out by plastic injection mold machines, which are basically automation. They're created by uh, different 3D printing processes and robotic assembly, and you know so much of what we do to create certain products or aspects of parts of different products is done in very automated processes. And so, if I want to make a plastic part, a decade ago, I made a plastic product and took it to market. I don't have any nearby. And once that machine is set up and the button is pushed, it takes like one person to manage a machine that spits out tens of thousands of plastic parts every day. Depending on the part and the size of the machine that's working, it'd be millions of parts. And with just a handful of people managing that process. And so if that's the case, like if it's really just a piece of hardware that does 95% of the production, maybe there's a little bit of handheld cleanup at the end in some instances. It is there's no reason why that can't be done here in the United States. The idea of building iPhones and screwing in those tiny screws, yeah, when you have that kind of complex assembly, then you do need cheap labor to get that product built with with a reasonable cost to allow for a good profit margin there. But there are a lot of products that don't do that. Again, plastic products, certain metal products, stamped products, products that are stamped on metal. These are all just automated machines where you're just feeding stuff in one end and it's spitting out product on the back end. And if, it takes a half a dozen people to run that production facility, whether they're making, you know, $5 an hour or $40 an hour, $100 an hour, it's not that big of a deal. So I've been saying for a decade, a lot of manufacturing could be coming back to the United States. I don't know. It's interesting. AI detectors complicate homework. Some students use artificial intelligence to cheat in school, while others use it to humanize their work. That's because increasingly, skeptical teachers run student essays through AI detection software designed to sniff out AI generated material. In response, the Wall Street Journal reports even students who never use AI to write their assignments are using the same software to check their work and avoid being flagged for robotic writing. It's kind of annoying, but in 2025, it's part of the deal, says one university student. I hadn't heard that before. That's kind of interesting. Students are using AI to prevent accusations of AI to cheat on writing assignments. Yeah. I mean, AI can be a huge tool in learning. I use it, I venture to say, not every day, probably 5-6 days a week though. Yesterday, I was working on this weekend creating a new application, and I needed some help to sort of get my thoughts together, look for some other suggestions. I was like, I think I might build it this way. What are some alternatives? I got some feedback that helped me redefine one aspect of it. It completely changed the way I thought I was going to build this thing. Super helpful. But everything's trickier in school because there are incentives to cheat. There's an incentive to cheat. And where there's an incentive to cheat, people are going to cheat. It's always been that way. That is not going to change. That's human nature. Deadly storms ravaged several states. 28 people were killed and dozens more injured in Missouri, Kentucky, Virginia after violent storms barreled through several states, unleashing powerful tornadoes. The death toll could keep rising, officials say. The devastation is truly heartbreaking, said the mayor of St. Louis in a news conference. It's been especially brutal tornado season in the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic regions, where just weeks earlier, similar storms caused deadly devastation. Yeah. It's been a rough one. I grew up, I phrase it, how I phrase it changes, but from the age of 1 to the age of 15, I lived in the St. Louis area. And so I still have most of my family is still in the St. Louis area. So I have not been back there in decades, but when it comes up and I start hearing these neighborhoods, like, oh, I have an aunt that lives in that neighborhood, like, that part of the city kind of catches my ear. And it's a mess, man. It is a mess. A lot of destruction. And with tornadoes in particular, watching the debris field is always fascinating and crazy because you'll see two houses just completely erased from the face of the earth, and then another house sitting right next to it that's perfectly fine. Just so weird. How do you wrap your head around that while your neighbor's house is completely gone and yours is right there? And especially when they happen at night, that's the frightening thing. It's one thing to, hear there's a tornado coming and walk out on your front porch and go like, oh, there's a tornado coming. It's another thing. It's like 3 a.m. and you're sleeping and surprise, here comes the tornado warning sound. Yeah, that's no good. No bueno. Capital One closes Discover deal. Capital One's nearly 15-month acquisition of Discover has been finalized, creating the nation's biggest credit card issuer by loan volume. The merger of the two credit card giants, originally valued at roughly $35 billion, grants Capital One access to Discover payments and network and customer base, giving it a competitive edge over rivals Visa and MasterCard. The takeover was approved last month despite competition concerns raised by consumer advocates and prior administration's Justice Department. Yeah, not a fan of this stuff. Don't like mergers on this level. If you got a B behind what your valuation is, I don't think you should be able to merge. That's when, we're living in a real weird world in terms of that kind of stuff. But with these traditional companies, that's just less competition for the consumer. Less competition is not good for the middle class. It's not good for the consumer. And, whenever these mergers happen, they always lead to, layoffs, efficiencies that mean less people in jobs. It's not good. It's just not good for the economy. It's good for a handful of people, but not good for the economy as a whole. Ethan, who is a Wharton School alum, he agrees with me. The continued conglomeration of the financial industry is troubling for him. Your intuition is correct, sir. Moody's cuts its U.S. rating. The United States credit rating was downgraded on Friday by Moody's, which cited the nation's ballooning government debt and elevated interest rates. The U.S. credit score was reduced from to AA1 from AAA, a move that follows similar downgrades by Fitch Ratings and S&P Global Ratings. The U.S. fiscal deficit for more than a year that began in October stands at $1.05 trillion, up 13% from the year earlier. Though tariffs have helped lower the imbalance last month, Moody's downgrade removes the country's remaining AAA credit rating from a major rating agency. Yep. The people in charge of tightening of the belt, again, don't have an incentive to do the right thing. This is not great. Not great. Again, not a thing we can control, but a thing we should be aware of. Return to office in lieu of layoffs. Return to office mandates have become an unofficial tool of attrition amid economic uncertainty, growing AI reliance, according to Business Insider. By restricting remote work, corporations can quickly reduce their headcount through voluntary turnover. However, some companies may underestimate the fallout. Research has found that return to office policies can encourage more senior and skilled personnel to exit. They can also take a large toll on those who choose to stay, leading to reductions in productivity and employee satisfaction. Yeah, we've been talking about this for a couple of years now. Not a news story, but it is one that we should remember and be reminded of. And that is the most skilled workers are going to be the ones who are least affected by these AI additions and layoffs. The AI is not as good as your senior, most experienced person. That's not true. That's not going to be true for a long time. And And so, everybody, I have a friend who he's got a master's degree. He's been working as a tech professional, a programmer and tech professional for 30 plus years. He was laid off this year. Like within a week, he was getting interviews from Amazon and some other companies. If you're an expert in the industry, there's going to be demand for you, even in a low job market, right? If you've got a good resume and and the proof that you can be additive to a company, you're going to be in demand. And they're also going to flex more with people like that. Yeah, junior level and mid level people, they want them butts in seats. And frankly, that's probably not a bad thing. If you're a junior level programmer, you want to spend your time around people with more experience so that you can grow as a programmer and become an expert quicker. Companies want you in the office because you're a young developer. You have an unproven track record. They have no proof that you can manage your own time well. And so they want to make sure that you're in an environment where they can get the most out of you. All of that sort of tracks. But again, if you're a senior, if you as a company don't give a little give and take there, chances are they're going to go find another role somewhere else, and you're going to lose all that institutional knowledge that you've invested in. They're going to take all that training that you provided for them and put it in service to somebody else. And of course, the flip side of that is, again, when you lower your headcount, that means that there's, the work doesn't go away. When you lower the headcount, mid-level in particular, people get saddled with a lot more work. So, yeah, not great. All right, we done did it. We're getting down to the end of it. How's your week looking? Mine's looking, I don't know how my days look. I looked at my day, but I haven't really looked at my week yet. What does my week look like? Oh, crazy. I gotta put that in my book. I forgot about this. Okay, that'll be the second thing I do when I get off the stream. Welcome. All right, if you're late to the stream, my name is Keith, and I have been a professional developer for over 30 years. I created this stream as a place to hang out for people who are in the job market and just want somebody to kind of hang out with, have an appointment so they can get up consistently every day of the week, or every weekday of the week, and kind of hang out and get those job applications out while you hear friendly and consistent voice talking you through the news of the day. And so that's where we're at. We're going to be back in 23 hours and 30 minutes to do this all over again. I hope you have a good Monday, and we will see